What's going on, everybody? It's the Entertainist, and welcome back. We're going to talk about It Chapter 2. I saw that last night, and that is directed by Andy Muschietti, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and stars James McAvoy, Bill Hader, and a few other actors and actresses that I've never heard of. Part 2 picks up 27 years later, and the Loser Club has to reunite to stop it again because Pennywise has returned. So the film opens up with catching up each and every one of them and seeing what they've been up to for the last 27 years, or just showing where they're at now. And to be honest, it's a 2 hour and 50-minute movie, and boy does it feel like it. The movie honestly does drag a long way and has some pretty bad pacing. I'm not gonna lie, I'm just gonna get into it. I was not huge on this movie. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it. It did not compare to the first one for me. I thought the first one was very well paced, and you got into the story, you got into the humor and the characters. And this one, I feel like, didn't really focus too much on the character development. There's a lot of flashbacks within it, which, I don't see why it was so necessary, because we know exactly what happened based on the first one. And I know that this is based on a novel, and to be honest, I've only read some of the novel. I haven't finished it yet. I do plan on it, so I don't know exactly too much about the adult part, but I looked into it, and many people aren't huge on the adult part. I hear the adult part of the story is, just kind of mediocre compared to the kid part. And that's how I feel with the miniseries too. And obviously the miniseries from 1990 with Tim Curry does not hold up. It is terrible altogether. But even at the time, like when I watched as a kid, I was never hooked into the adult part. And in this one, yeah, it's more enjoyable than the adult part in the miniseries, but it seems like that they're just so focused. It's like this movie even knows that the first one is better than this new one, what they're making it on. They're just so focused on the flashbacks and who they were as kids, rather than who they are as adults. And to be honest, it kind of feels like you're just watching the same movie, because what makes this movie so long is that they get together and then they have to go into their separate ways and figure out, fight their own fears within themselves individually. And it just becomes repetitive. And it's also, we've seen that in the first movie. They learned this lesson. They knew that the only way to stop it is by fighting together. So I don't get why they had to drift off. I mean, if that happens in the story, that happens in the story. It dragged on way too long, and for how this movie goes, it did not need to be 2 hour and 50 minutes. Because when they do drift off and go in their own individual ways, and I'm not going to spoil what happens in those, but let's focus on Bill and get into what scares him and show a flashback and show him how to face that, and let's get into Richie, and same thing. It goes through every single character, and it doesn't become exciting anymore. I will say, though, that the best character and the one that, I appreciate the most is Richie, played by Bill Hader. And Bill Hader did an awesome performance. And, they all did a really good job with the roles. It's not the actors. It's more of the script, in my opinion, that was done poorly. The characters in the first one, you really got into, and you really cared for them, and you cared about them individually and as a whole. In this one, you care about them when they reunite, but it doesn't keep you hooked, or at least it didn't keep me hooked in it. I didn't get so invested in these guys as I did in the first one. And obviously Pennywise makes the movie. Every part with Pennywise, with actual Pennywise, not all CGI'd Pennywise, because the CGI in this movie kind of kills it for me. I think it kills the suspense a little bit. And just what they use that CGI with, I was like, all right, this is a little bit over the top. But when it just shows Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise, just him talking, it's really good moments. This movie does have let me get into some of the positives here, because I do have some positives about this movie. Some of the special effects and the shots in this movie and some of the scenes are very well done. One especially, my favorite scene is with, and I'm not going to say what happens in it. It has Bill Hader involved when he goes off on his own. When it gets into that, there is a very well done scene that is very creepy. And I did like that Pennywise was used more in this movie than he was in the first one, but at the same time, using him too much made him less scary. It kind of ruined the momentum that he had in the first one, where he, you barely see him and he's not the only focus on the movie, but you know that he's always there within the shadows. He's always lurking around somehow. And in this, I just feel like they just kept using it, and they kind of overdid it a little bit. There were just parts that dragged on way too long with their fight with Pennywise, with a bunch of other stuff. I think a lot of the dialogue was cheesy too. There was a lot of romance moments, and I don't mind romance, and since it is in the book, I get it, but the way they do the romance scenes, and it will be within a scene that is supposed to be scary and crazy and fucked up, and then they add some romantic part, and I'm like, and they have the cheesy music within the cheesy dialogue, and I'm like, really, this is what we're gonna do here? Okay, whatever. It was just very clunky. This movie didn't really know when to be scary, when to be funny, when to be suspenseful. They just kind of crammed it all into one. Yeah, my overall problem with this movie that just, stood out for me the most, that was just too much, was the pacing of the movie and the script. Other than that, the actors did a fine job. It was perfect casting. They really felt like you were seeing the grown-up version characters that you saw in the first one. And another thing, they had to, when they go in the flashbacks and show the kids, and since it's 2 years old, 2 years later since the first movie came out, these kids look older now, especially Finn. I forgot his last name, Mike from Stranger Things. He looks a lot older now than he did in the first It. And boy, they had to use CGI to de-age them a little bit, and had to mess with the voice quality to make their voice sound like a 14-year-old or however old they're supposed to be. And boy, is it just so distracting and stands out too much. I know it really sounds like I'm hating on this movie. To be honest, I do have more negatives with it than I do positives, but there are positives in there. And overall, I mean, the movie's okay. I'm not going to tell you not to go see it. If you see the first one, yeah, you should go see this one, but this movie doesn't have the rewatchability as the first one does. I've seen the first one numerous times, and it's so entertaining. This one, it got to a point where I'm like, I'm ready for this to be over. And there are just certain parts that were dragged on way too long, and this movie could have been, and with how the movie goes, it could have been cut by an hour, and it probably would have been a well-made movie. And if the script was written a little bit better, I think it would have been just as good as the first one, in my opinion. So I'm going to give It Chapter 2 a 3 out of 5 stars, just right in the middle. It was okay. Guys, thank you for watching, and let me know of what you thought of It Chapter 2 in the comments. If you haven't seen it yet, I do recommend you seeing it just to finish out this story. I'm just letting you know you're in for a long ride. There are very funny moments along the way, and there are some really good scenes, but overall, I just think that the story of how it goes, just the adult section of this story, just isn't that interesting, and it almost feels like that the movie itself knows that. That's why they keep referring back to the kids. Even this movie knows, well, the kids section is more entertaining than the adult part, and it just doesn't really get you invested into the adults, since they keep flashing back to kids and we don't get enough character development out of them. And the parts with Pennywise are very entertaining. So that's my take on It Chapter 2. Thank you all for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed and want to see more, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.